Here we are doing a little bit more work on the Fury engine, just boring the rear shaft wheel roller bearing housing. I've just finished the main shaft housing. The pre-machined but not the correct size for the bearings, so I don't like the sound of that. Oh, it's okay. It's just where the bar comes back into the bore, I think. Anyway, just boring this so I can fit the needle roller in on the main bearing. Progress on this has been slow. I've been doing a few other jobs, but generally speaking it's come on quite well. There's not a lot more to do with it, and when I do get around to assembling it, I'll show you a bit more of it assembled. Well, you can see the Fury cylinder head. It's upside, well, it's not actually upside down, it's down the right way. There you go, it's partly machined, and I can't rely on this datum. This has a datum because it's very uneven. You can see here that the pockets have been cut for the valves, but they're not finished sizes. Also similar for the camshaft, which is a direct fit in the cylinder head. In other words, it's running in the casting. It hasn't been bored out, it's still rough casting, yet these have been machined, so it's kind of an odd thing that the way it's set up. It's very difficult to decide which way to run things, but anyway, what I've done is the only way I can mount it to get it on the cross slide to bore it on the lathe, what I'll do is take this off and mount it on the saddle, and run a between centres boring bar and bore out the housings here and here and here and here to take the camshaft. The only way I can think of putting it on there is to fit a plate to here, because it's a nice flat surface, and I've got screws I can grip, and use this plate as a clamping plate on the cross slide. But first things I've got to do is make some plugs here, and for the back end shove them in, which I've done, and then I can bring my centres up from the lathe and then pack this up to the correct height, so that when the boring bar goes in, it's at the correct centre height. But I'll film that when I get it done. What I'm doing at the moment is boring out the camshaft housing for the BSA Fury engine. You can see here this bore's not finished yet. That'll be the next ones to do. I'm machining the large bore first because I can get it from this end, and then I'll put a different type of boring bar in a between centres one to do the final bore at the far end, which is a smaller diameter. So I'm hoping everything goes okay here. That's a one chance only job. The finish that this tool's producing is really nice. It's a super stout boring bar, so I'm not getting any chatter issues. I've tried it with a very good quality boring head with a boring bar mounted in the chuck, but it just there was too much overhang and it was chattering, so I decided to go for the heavy guns. And I'm using this boring bar. It's got a micro adjustable head, so I can adjust it, you know, half a thou at a time, so I can get the quality of finish I need. I'm just running back to finish this way so that I take any marks out. You can see there the cutting tool is cutting, just very little at the moment. I'm almost. Well, there we've got the camshaft in the housing. It's just entered here. I've got to machine a counterbore here to sink this further in so that it's flush with here on the outside, because there's a keeper plate goes across here that holds the camshafts in. I'll do that at a later date. the setup isn't too difficult for it. It's not as critical as the setup for this, but anyway, I'm pleased with the results so far. It looks as though it's going to be a good turnout for this. So what I'm doing tonight is I've just run a test program for milling the combustion chambers in this cylinder head here, and this is supposed to be a spiral finish program in Fusion 360, and you can see here this combustion chamber is definitely a circular path. This one is going transversely across the top of the casting, and also it's missing out half of this. So I don't know what's going on there, but I'll run it through because I want to see what the spiral path looks like. As you can see, it's making lots of noises, going nowhere. But we'll see what transpires. I'm intrigued by this flat spot on that one. However, I've got to test it out somehow. I'm just running a test program to machine the combustion chambers in the BSA Fury cylinder head, and I've got so far with it. As you can see, it's a kind of roughed out cut, and I'm hoping that this cut, it's very fine, should get rid of most of those machine marks, and it'll look quite nice. So we'll see how it progresses. So what I'm doing this evening is machining these two blocks flat. You can see that I've got this cylinder head mounted on it's quite a thick plate. It's bolted onto that. I've tapped 4 holes. You can see the cap screws there just down here that are holding it down. The idea is I machine these surfaces flat so I can invert it and then machine the combustion chambers, because that's a major part of this casting that's not been machined. So I'll just carry on and do that. That's all I intend to do tonight. They're quite thick blocks of metal. They're held in by cap screws, which are probably ½ inch proud. I'll take them down until they're almost flush with the heads, and we'll leave it at that. You can see the progress there. There's a nice couple of flats on here. They'll be great for setting the cylinder head face up on the bed of the machine so I can mill the hemispheres in the head. I did my test program the other day, and that's a milled hemisphere. It looks pretty good. So hopefully we'll get a nice finish on it, and it'll be great when it. Well, this is the final pass. As you can see, it's quite a good finish. See across there. I've reduced the feed so that it gives it a smoother finish. You can see the roughing finish over there. You can see some of the lines of the cutter in it, but if you take it slowly with this high feed, with this high RPM, it's a really nice. Here we've got the combustion chamber being machined using it's Fusion 360 to generate the program. Quite a lot of lines of code on it. It's a very seems to be pretty good. I've checked the alignment by placing the cylinder over the top of the head and checking down there, and it sits nicely in the bore and so on. There we have both of the combustion chambers finished. Quite good finish in there, nice and smooth, and about the right depth for the insert. So these machine marks here, they look worse than they actually are. You can't really feel them just the way they appear on the camera. So I've just got to take a skim across here, and the latest skim that I can, just to take any marks out. 1 or 2 scribe lines here where I've got my centres from. Have to take them out, but no more than 5 thou coming off there, and that's it, done. Both, they appear to be slightly over to this side, but that's I've checked with the barrel on, and that's the way the barrel sits. So we just have to see how it goes when the inserts are in. Yeah, it should be okay. So here we are, just facing the cylinder head down. There's quite a bit of distortion here. You can see, or you might be able to see just over at the far side, it's just starting to cut. It's been cutting on that square flange there for quite some time, so it's, yeah, as I was saying before the batteries ran out, it's quite high here. It's just starting to cut on this part of the flange. You get my fingers out of the way, that's a fly cutter. That'll take your finger off quite easily. And I'm just taking 1.5 thou, or just on about 0.4 of a mil each time. In fact, less than that, 0.1 of a mil, let's say. And you can see it's coming on anyway. Well, that's the cylinder head facing finished. I'll just get a cloth here and wipe off some of this stuff, and there you can see that's the Superfly cutter, and it's produced a nice finish too, so I'm happy with it. There's very little more to do on this, just a couple of holes to tap, thank goodness, and that'll be the head finished. What I'm up to at the moment is machining this part of the cylinder head to accept the plate that fits in here. As you can see, there's a casting rib here which is in the way. There was one here, and it's got to be machined away to allow this to sit flat with the camshafts in place. So that's what I've been doing. Nearly finished now, just centered over this hole. I've got the size that I need there. I'll do this one and I'll see what the plate. Okay, well, more progress on the BSA Fury engine. As you can see, I've got the chain, the slippers in for the chain here. There's another one here. This is the pin for it, which is anchored down here. The cams are in, as you can see, there. The cam retaining plate is in, both cams exhaust. This is fitted, bolt made, and I've also drilled through here down into the oil passage. This was an absolute nightmare, drilling right the way through here. The drill wandered off a little, so I had to push a channel, make a channel in the bearing so that it would distribute the oil into the cam, because the flow of oil is into this chamber from the pump into the cam via the bearing, via a slot in the bearing or a hole in the bearing, along the shaft, out on the cams, on the cam buttons on the followers, and also out here on the outer bearing. There's a plate to go on here to be drilled and tapped, and there's an oil seal to go on that end still, but as you can see, alternator's fitted. Gearbox is in, but I've got a slight problem here. I can't seem to get any further in than that now. I don't know if it's a gear's not matching, or this case I think is not quite right for this. I think this was an early case. It's totally different to all the rest, as you can see from the way the casting is. So it may well be just a slight problem there. I think the way around it may be to take a little bit of material off one of the selectors, but I'm not going to do that until I've spoken to Angus rather, who owns the engine. I just finished this evening, making this. This was one part that you didn't have. It's the retainer for the oil pump, so that's the oil pump in position. Another problem there is I'm not sure if it's a right pump, and it's very hard to tell whether it's engaged properly or not. I think it is, but It's the only way to find out would be to kick it over about 400 times and see if you get the oil out. But that'll come at a much later date. So there's not an awful lot more to do. I've got to take the gearbox out again and put the selector spring. There's a spring that goes in on this back wall here, a detent spring in the selector rotor. And really that's more or less it. After this it goes off, it'll get final fitted, and hopefully I get a run out of it. Who knows?